Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair today. And I have a special guest with me. Peter Vasilion is the CEO and IT division lead at Facet Interactive. It's a company that's known for helping organizations achieve alignment between their tech systems and their strategy goals. He's also the COO at FlightFX, a trailblazer in immersive flight simulation experiences. Peter brings a unique perspective on how to lead technical teams, drive meaningful transformation, and scale ideas into executable strategies. Peter, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you finding the story interesting, and hopefully we have a good conversation.
Yeah, well, I know we will. And so for my audience, you need to go over to this guy's LinkedIn page and you'll be like, dude, how does this guy have time to do anything?
Yeah, the secret is you turn all your hobbies into work, and then you get stuck.
Absolutely. Well, hey, you do have an interesting background. So before I get to my questions, why don't you tell your audience a little bit about your journey? What's it been like? How did you get to where you are today?
Sure, absolutely. So, realistically, I think like a lot of people trying to find where things made sense between like work and school and everything else that was going on, pursuing academics and also being involved at a community level. I grew up in, Greek Orthodox community out in Southern California. And so I spent a lot of time doing a lot of cultural, like Greek line dancing and serving as part of the church community there as well. Finding the balance between what it is that I wanted to be doing, what it is that I was good at, and a lot of that kind of centered around kind of how I grew up, which was in the back, warehouse of my parents' computer company that they were working on out of the late 90s and early 2000s. Got started really there and taking things apart because I could break things and it was right. Everybody has, there were spare parts repaired to things that were just sitting there that I could play with, right? 14-inch floppy disks and all the other good stuff, right? I'm a Pentium 2 generation kid.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's where I spent the majority of my time was computers and tried to parlay that going to high school, trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do because I do enjoy creative things and I wanted to go into editing and become a film editor. Um, and then that whole process but really came down to that question again of what, one, what's going to pay the bills, but two, is this thing sustainable long term as a balance between like education and work and like being able to proceed toward my end goals. And what ended up coming out of that is marketing and went to, Long Beach State, got my degree in marketing and started IT consulting while I was in school and spent 10 years building a company after that with my partner, Jordan Ryan, my CTO. And then, FlightFX became a collaborative project as well after that. So it's been this application of trying to find that nice middle ground of the creative and the technical and being able to provide value to customers and clients and figuring out where school and work kind of commingle on the way there.
How do you approach aligning IT solutions with the overarching business strategies and trying to drive meaningful change?
So let's talk about the relationship that IT just has in general for most businesses. Most businesses see IT as a cost center, which is always very interesting. And shifting the technology aspect because IT has become so many things at this point for so many businesses. It's become an enablement layer. It's become, businesses consider a cost center because it's just providing support and making sure that the teams are working, that their laptops are all functioning effectively. But then it also has become this additional cloud layer of services that enable and empower, things like AI and enable and empower data and like business intelligence and making better decisions at the realm of traditional IT is kind of bled into there's this gray area that my partner and I, Jordan and I, have looked at, which is how do you make IT truly meaningful? How do you make technology truly meaningful? And that's to connect both the story of that support and enablement, where it's considered cost, with the other side of the business, which is success and revenue, and communicating the value that IT can bring or technical solutions can bring to the top of your sales funnel or your sales and marketing teams, even enabling new products that companies, legacy companies might not know that they have, right? They have data that they can monetize or they can leverage in order to make better decisions or upsell their customers, and they're just not tapping into it yet. So that getting to that point is a lot of customer education. It's a lot of that interpersonal relationship building, and it's telling the story just like we're doing here, right? We're telling the story of the building blocks along the way.
So, what's one mistake that you see leaders make when they're trying to bridge the gap between IT and business strategy?
I absolutely think that thinking of it as a zero-sum game, that they're looking at IT as going, well, if I spend, X dollars over here, this is going to be a line item that impacts the budget on the other side of the equation. And it's just a one-to-one. And the difficulty is trying to prove that or to take a leap of faith in some cases, because it's hard to game out, depending on the business, what that multiplicative factor might be on that IT spend for a specific type of project. And when people come to the table and they go like, they're looking at it as, hey, I want to sell you, and this is the perspective that I think that fails a lot of people. I'm a really intelligent, smart guy, person, and I want to do X. Like, I want to do this project. I want to move us to this new service, whatever it happens to be. And you should do it because this product or service is great. But we're not communicating the business value and how that translates out on the other side to the bottom line. And that's the piece that gets missed. A lot of times you can tell a fantastic story about how, for example, improving security posture at a company, right? Taking more cautionary measures and things like that helps improve your ability to get approved for cyber insurance. But having really good cyber insurance makes you look better to potential customers. And telling that story of like, look, we can go fulfill our security questionnaire. We can go fulfill or go sell on the fact that we have a compliance like ISO or SOC 2 is often missed because it just seems like we're going to go spend money to go spend money. And unless there's this lever on the other side that someone's trying to pull, you end up with just friction. So it's a difficult line to walk if you're fully focused only on solutions or you're fully focused only on driving, business value on the other side. It takes a person or a team with a mix in the middle to be able to make those points.
Can you share an example of where you have simplified a complex process within an organization, and what was the outcome?
Absolutely. So let's give a real world example that's tangible. And we have a customer or a partner that we've been working with for the last 3 months, and they do corporate line apparel sales. And what they were looking to do is streamline some of their internal operations so that they can be able to leverage, with a small team, continue to drive revenue growth, right? With a small sales team, how do you continue to drive revenue growth without adding headcount? And where that ended up, we helped them through a rapid prototype and a rapid go-to-market strategy with a new tool, like an internal catalog tool that allows them to price and get stock information from all the different, companies that they interact with, so that, they know that a pair of pants, they have a certain quantity of stock. They don't have to go to a vendor's website to go check. That's all pulled into their catalog. It's all presented in one place. It's all uniform. And that process would take, let's say, what they would be doing day to day. They wake up at almost 6 a.m., 5 a.m. They have to get online. They have to go look at how many orders they have in the morning. They have to go through those orders. They have to check to see if there's inventory for each line item. And they're not done with that order checking and the review of their available stock and product until like almost 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And now they can do that entire process in about 2 hours, right, in the morning. So they get up at 6, by 8, it's done. And they're also exploring, starting to share that catalog with their customers so that they are able to also look up inventory and other things on their own. And it allows them to, offload like almost an entire salesperson's job to self-service.
So, how do you determine whether a process is ready for simplification? Are there signs that you're looking for?
I think the best sign for a process to get simplified, or let's call it automated, right? Through process automation and evaluating it. I think if the process is repeatable, if it looks like you can stamp it out in some factor with, right, it's easiest when the widget is a widget and you could just pull the lever and the widget comes out. And then the other side of that is is the person that is working that process, is there an opportunity to multiply the value that they have to the business? And I think that those going hand in hand make a great opportunity to leverage process automation and simplify a workflow. So, you're not eliminating the work for someone. What you're doing is eliminating the tedium or toil, and you're allowing them to go about their day doing what brings value to the business, which is not, staring at the same like Excel spreadsheet all day, copy pasting.
Right.
It's being on the phone, locking down new deals, bringing in new orders, going out to lunch, taking out vendors, things like that. So that's a great way to identify where you might need help. And in the age of no code, low code, it's become more accessible than ever, even for individual users, dependent on corporate IT policy, of course. But there's so many tools available to so many people now. Even something as simple as writing Excel or Google Sheets queries, formulas that help you format your data more effectively, right? If you're going sheet to sheet, ChatGPT, Copilot, they're great for that stuff. And it will save you hours of trying to find a specific formula to do a specific thing. It'll save you the hours of trying to learn regex and have to look, dealing with that. So I think that there's a great opportunity for even people who are not as technical to take advantage of a lot of the tools that are available.
So for most of us who are not technologically as savvy, things like ChatGPT can be scary and we don't know where to start. For somebody who would love to get into that, how can they start making that work for them, their teams, the things that they do in the space that they are working and leading?
So the first thing I would point out is have an understanding of, and this is the same way that we advise all of our customers, is understand what data privacy is there and available to you. And that's the first thing I will, warn everybody that don't put personal medical information in, don't do any of that stuff unless you own the back end hardware and infrastructure for this thing. Because right now the space is very interesting because we've not had a major data breach of a vendor yet. We've had a major, what I would consider like almost social engineering of the models, where people have been able to ask personal questions of it and it's responded with personal information. But keeping in mind that if you look at that and you understand what you have available to you, which is, ChatGPT, not to go too far into the weeds, but they have an option where you can turn off training from your prompts and things like that, so that when you're working with ChatGPT, it's not using that data in the rest of the model. Also, the API calls to ChatGPT from other services, those are not used to train. So keep that in mind, that you just want to make sure that whatever it is, if it's Gemini through Google Workspace, because now they've decided to offer that everywhere and it's just included if you have a Google Workspace account, you just want to make sure that your organization's policy, and they all have help articles on how to do it, that you make sure that they're not training on your data. The other part of that is, all right, so we've gotten through the big scary, oh my goodness, what could happen if it has my data question. The other side of the fence is getting started now is honestly easier than ever with some of the tools that are available. So I would call out things for students or people who are trying to do research. Was it Notebook NL from Google at this point is fantastic. It picked up a lot of steam, where you could have it, you could feed it PDFs and other documents and links, and it would basically pull you together that podcast episode of two hosts talking through a subject and giving you kind of a layman breakdown, very NPR style conversation about a specific subject or some of your research that you were doing. And that's a great tool that's fairly easy to use as truly like a notebook for learning. And then you have ChatGPT and OpenAI have their voice chat that's been out for, I believe, a couple of months now, where you can just chat to your phone, speak to your phone, have a conversation with the agent. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's very easy to use. The models continue to get better, and those kinds of things make it very simple, especially answering some basic business questions or trying to support, what it knows about a specific process or things like that. And, OpenAI has released their research tools now, or their research models. And realistically, those research models are a fantastic starting point for getting an understanding of a subject or building something. And I think the best way to start in all of these is just ask a question. You know, Ask a question that you might know the answer to, that you have a general understanding, so you can gauge the quality of the feedback that you get from the model. But I wouldn't, is it going to do everybody's job for them? No. But if you know exactly what you need, think of it as a tool, right? A chef uses a knife in the kitchen, developer uses their computer as a tool. The rest of us, we all use like car as a tool. It's transportation for most of us. This is just another tool in our belt to make us take some of the mental load off of having to come up with very, very specific ways of doing something. And that's typically the way that we use it at Facet. It's like a great deal of help to get 90% of the way to a solution and then spend the brain power on getting the last 10% just right. So hopefully I hope that opens people up to having some experience with it. And I would say that the landscape has gotten flooded with a lot of different solutions. I would almost communicate that if you want to get started, go with one of the major companies at this point, right? Go with Microsoft, go with Google, or go with OpenAI. There are other options in there that are available, but those names, for the most part, people seem to be most comfortable with. Hopefully that's a great place to start. And I'd be interested to hear where some of the listeners, if they're not already using it, where they decide to go with some of these, with some AI help.
Facet Interactive operates across multiple time zones. So what strategies have you used to lead and manage in distributed teams in an effective manner?
Absolutely. I would say coffee is like the tool number one. What's most interesting in trying to lead across distributed teams is we have teams around the globe, and that warrants different time zones. Is at first we started trying to manage them directly ourselves, and my partner Jordan and I would be up. He's on the East Coast, which is a little bit more forgiving for some of our offshore team, but what we've ended up doing is just we've shifted our work schedules in order to accommodate meeting with our offshore team members to keep things realistically moving. Honestly, it's in order to run those kinds of teams, you either have to do the work yourself of managing them, or you shift that and build a management layer into the company in order to support that. We do have team members that are across multiple time zones in North America. We have team members who are in Europe, and they help us cover quite a bit of India, Australia, and just continental Europe. So having that additional layer where we can have other people who are able to meet when it is mostly convenient, and we also can address, a time zone overlap with our customers, has been exceptionally helpful and has allowed us to get a little bit more sleep. Culturally, it's definitely an interesting, understanding the culture, the employment culture of each country that we work with, and also just the general, let's say, community cultural fit in each country is very interesting. And one of the things that I'm very proud of at Facet is that we are very embracing of everybody's, cultures and their needs as far as, days, time off, and the different ways that they are working with their families. We really want to embrace that because, there's always the feedback that we get from some of our offshore team before they come to us or they've been working with us. And part of the reason they are working with us is that the previous team they were with, they expected them to work on their weekends. They expected them to constantly be available, over the course of the US working day, east to west coast. And at some point, we have to be understanding that everybody has a family. If we expect someone to work their weekend, or we expect somebody to work, through their family time, that there should be compensation for that and a conversation about it. And that's how we've built a lot of I would say the mutual respect and trust with our team. People will offer. Absolutely, they'll offer, say, "Hey, I'm going to work the weekend. Hey, I'm going to do this." And it's realistically, it's on us as the leaders, and it's on us as the leaders to make or set expectations with a customer, set a project up so that it doesn't require that time. And that's something that we strive for, is that we try to manage expectations so that weekends are not something that people typically are working, that late nights are not things people are typically working, and it leads to a much happier, productive team during the day. They're not burnt out, and we encourage everyone to take their PTO. So that's the way that we've made it work so far.
How do you maintain accountability and motivation across such distances, not just to make sure people are doing what they're supposed to, but also that they're taking their PTO?
We spend a lot of time in forecasting. So we use Harvest for time tracking, and Harvest also has a forecast component. We sit down and we review everybody's schedule. We look at, hey, you're really committed to us. You're full time. You're really committed to us 40 hours a week. We're not expecting 60. We're not expecting 80. We expect 40, and if we get more, that's great. And we can have those conversations, but we try to make sure that people are taking their PTO or are honest with the hours that they're working, because the way that we frame it is a culture of accountability, a culture of what we've considered, blanking on the author who wrote about radical candor. And we try to be very direct in, if it's taking more time to do a task, if it's taking more time on a project, that's not a failure of the developer, the engineer, the team member, right? That's a conversation about how we estimate things. That's a conversation about our understanding and our discovery process. And it's collectively, a team conversation, a team retro to understand that and make changes so that we don't have that problem in the future. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is just, how accurate are we on our estimating? How accurate are we in supporting our team? And that's how we address the accountability. Is there's no one's getting their wrists slapped, or no one's getting yelled at for, or penalized for this. We all want to know if someone is stuck. We all want to know if there are challenges, because it allows us to pivot and keep everybody aligned. Maybe someone needs some time off. Maybe the specific tasks they've been assigned aren't a good fit, and we just have to shift that around and put them onto a task where they are an A player, and bring in somebody else who can handle that other work as an A player. And that's how we hire. We definitely spent a lot of time with, I believe the book is called Who, and it talks about hiring A players and how you bring those people in, what kinds of questions. It's typically for like executive hiring, but we've adapted it to, and the scorecard system in that book, to hiring all of our staff. And it's worked out exceptionally well for us. So that side, the other side of accountability across time zones and what are people doing during their day, realistically, there are stand-ups and stand-downs, and we get status updates for what people are touching. And we have project management tools like Jira, where we track everything, and we try to make sure that they're what we consider as like literate programming, and people are putting notes in and updating their project managers and teams. And so far, that again continues to work well. We have always, there are going to be people, regardless of where they're at, who have some challenges that impact their ability to work, or their desire to be communicative. And in those cases where we've had that happen, realistically, it's few and far between. And we really try, even if it's a personal emergency or something like that, we try to be very understanding and open, and try to be very supportive as best we can. Those one-off conversations are going to happen in any business. And so we just try to approach it with an air of humility and a human touch, and try to work through, again, coming back to what can we do better in order to allow this person to communicate with us that they are they're literally underwater, cannot, something has happened, there's weather, there's internet outage, their family situation has changed, so that they feel comfortable in communicating that. And that's been the best way to allow for a level of accountability and a level of expectation setting across the business that has, I think, allowed us to deliver exceptional work for our customers, and keep our team, um, you know, continue to get positive feedback from our team about working with us.
A lot of companies struggle with digital transformation. So, from your experience, what are the critical elements that leaders need to focus on to ensure a successful digital transformation?
So from a leadership perspective, digital transformation is always interesting, because I feel like, and my partner Jordan wrote an entire ebook on digital transformation, so I'm happy to share. It's a great read. It's pretty quick, which is fantastic. We try to deliver high value in a short period of time. But digital transformation often is leveraged as a political tool and internal to a company. And there are teams who want digital transformation who are altruistic, who really want to see the company shift. And then there are other, I guess, ideologies and goals at work within the business, or other outlooks in work. So the most important thing in trying to negotiate a digital transformation, let's say a small company, single owner with a team of like 15 to 20, who's what I would consider, maybe they're a recruiting firm, maybe they're working through, and their property management. Really what it comes down to, property management at that size is probably a great fit. and you have a couple multifamily units under your belt, and you really want to you go paperless, you want to use something like an AppFolio, manage your units, whatever it is, right? That's easy. That's a one-person decision. And then you can kind of, you can communicate that to your team and work with them through that. Then it's just a question of change management. And that's the biggest, I think, consideration for the small size of the pool. When you get to like small, medium enterprise, where you're talking, hundreds of users and you have a leadership team, potentially even you have some committees that you have to work through for digital transformation. Oftentimes, you've got, like I said, these non-complementary views on where the company should be, what vendors you want to use, what story that information is going to tell at the end of the day, that you have to negotiate that with all the different stakeholders that are there. So oftentimes digital transformation is almost dependent on an agreement as to what story everybody is going to try to tell at the end of the day. What is your source of truth? And what will become the source of truth if it's like paperwork and flat files like Excel spreadsheets and Word docs and whatever else you got running around. Like what does the storytelling look like in this new version, this digitally transformed version of the business? And even if that's something as simple as, hey, we want to replace our copier fleet, right? You go to a managed print program, you're like, we want to replace all our printers are old. We have 100 printers we need replaced, whatever it happens to be. The conversation is, well, is it going to save us money? Is one half of that. The other side is, well, what is it going to enable? Is it going to allow us to scan directly to our email? Is it going to allow us to send these documents out more effectively? Can we cancel our fax lines, right? Because we can now receive emails on the units. And negotiating that across a couple of individuals, because you have the CFO on one side who's only usually focused on the profitability of the company. And then you have the other C-suite who, chief revenue officer, CEO, president, what have you, are focused on, how do we enable our teams and continue to grow the business? And so that at the small, medium size, SME size, small, medium enterprise size is that's the conversation. Then you get to large enterprise where, you're now negotiating the shift with their existing IT team. What do they have? Do they have legacy IT? What are they able to do? Then you negotiate on a level of whatever committee is now formed to be in charge of this digital transformation. And finally, you have to then go execute on the other side. And you've got whatever timeline and KPIs that you have to make sure that you're hitting to keep the customer happy. And so a lot of businesses, they start the process of digital transformation and then stop, because somewhere along that spectrum, something gets too hard because expectations aren't aligned. And I think that would be the number one piece in all of that, is once expectations are aligned and you have a lay of the land and everybody's they generally accept what direction everyone is trying to march toward. It makes it much easier to carve up the responsibility as a business gets larger and larger for different pieces of this, given specific, let's call them integrations, right? And synergies across a business that they need to meet. So, does our new CRM system, because we want to get out of Excel spreadsheets for the sales team, does the new CRM speak to our ERP system? And so we can move our sales orders all the way through the funnel. Does our marketing stack and our tools, does that communicate back to the CRM so that we can populate the marketing messaging or know when to pull people out of certain ad campaigns or cold email chains? And that's where you start stacking the complexity on the other side. Yeah, that's my very long-winded way of getting to, it's just, managing expectations and change management across all sizes of companies.
Tech-driven change can be tough for people to buy into. What's your advice in leading others through that change?
With technical change, there's always going to be a question of right, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we get that a lot. Hey, we have this system, it works. Why do we need to do anything differently? And the easy sell is almost always when there's an external factor that's pressing on a business. And that might be that their insurance carrier is pressing on them. They have a pending lawsuit and they have to mitigate. They had a cyber event that they need to mitigate. They've hired a new staff member who is expecting or would like a certain level of technical capability, right? You have something external to the consultant that's allowing, or the agency that's allowing them to kind of tip the scale. On the other side of that is trying to sell and convince an existing customer or a net new customer that the way that we do things is, more effective, or there's going to be a change that's more effective. That is a lot of time just sold on relationship and building an understanding over time of that person's business. One of the things that we like to do is become, we consider ourselves in a lot of ways custodians of our customers' businesses or partners' businesses. And so we treat, the budgets, the costs, everything, we treat them like it's, would be coming out of our pocket. And we look at, is this cost effective for the customer? How do we communicate this with business value attached? But also, how do we tell the story that because you like, Jordan or Peter, you will like working with Facet. You will like working with the rest of the company because the leadership at Facet, the relationship that you've built with us, even if it's just going out for coffee, if it's going out to play golf or whatever it happens to be, right? That relationship, it's the trust test. Do I trust this person? Are they straightforward? Are they being honest with me? Are they just trying to sell me into something? And that's the other side of being that, even internal at a company, right? You're playing the game internally of how do I represent my value? How do I represent my expertise? Do I have a good relationship with the people that are signing the checks at the end of the day? Or my boss, who's approving my whatever initiative it might be from the bottom up to that relationship building is so key to opening up these doors. Or even if it's not with that person, it's with someone that they know, right? Because then they become your I refer to it as like almost like your crowbar to get into other opportunities, right?
I'd love to shift a little bit and talk about FlightFX. And what's really interesting is FlightFX is pushing the boundaries in simulation tech. What leadership lessons have you gained from that process to apply across industries?
FlightFX has definitely been a completely different experience than what Jordan and I are also partners over at FlightFX. And we have two other partners as well. So there's four of us. And a lot of the working in a team of four is much different than working in a team of two, especially when Jordan and I have known each other for over 10 years at this point. And, right, you get to that point, we're basically brothers. You can have it out with each other behind closed doors and everybody can, everybody can go, everybody can go have dinner afterwards and nobody's frustrated or upset. You're just trying to get through it. But when you have a partnership of four and you have a little bit more division of labor or division of skill set and understanding, then becomes Jordan and I do cross over quite a bit in our experience and skill set. And it makes it easy for us to kind of pivot into supporting the other one, which is great. At FlightFX, there are things I'm not a person that understands. And I had this conversation with the team. I'm not a person that understands how all the flight like hydraulic systems work, or nor am I the person that's necessarily interested in that. But I enjoy the problem set and solutioning of how do we make the development team effective? How do we make the 3D team effective? Jordan's very much focused on that, as well as like how do we introduce process to make things work well? How do we manage the sales process and sales cycle? And then our other partners are, one of them is absolutely focused. Our CEO Nick is focused on the aircraft. Like that's his biggest thing. He loves aviation, and it comes through in everything that he does. And that's being able to as a leader place the trust into like Nick for understanding what our next aircraft might be, what our next project might be, how the community is going to respond to that, or working with Tom Livings, who is head of 3D and leads all of that aspect of the business, and understanding that, hey, we have to drop this problem on Tom's doorstep, and trust that Tom's going to solve it. And that piece of not having that cross-functional, like having the expertise to just step into that other role or put another hat on, it's been one of the most challenging, I think, pieces, and one of the biggest lessons in allowing and working with other people to allow them to shine when they're at it's not like we're hiring, how do I put this? It's not like we're hiring 5 people to handle every aspect of like, oh, we need a 3D or a 3D project manager, 3D delivery, 3D, the 5 other aspects of 3D, like assembly and all these other pieces that go into it. We have to rely on Tom to kind of manage that. And that's just become like I said, I don't have any other thing. I have a daughter, and I imagine the first time that she gets into a car and drives by herself is going to be very similar. It's like, oh, like I see it, but I, the
Yeah,
trepidation.
absolutely. Peter, I'd love to talk about cultivating a culture of innovation. You're in innovative spaces. How do you foster a culture that encourages innovation and continuous improvement?
So what I would say is a Facet operates, and we carry this over to FlightFX as well. Like we operate on a 5 pillars, but the most important one being peers, not peons. You know,
I love that.
yeah, the goal of that is that there's nobody in the company that has no idea as to how a process should proceed forward. Everyone has an opinion or some feedback on how a workflow is run or what could be better. And the best way to put this is in life, people have different levels of experience with certain scenarios, and so they know how to like mitigate the problem with that scenario. And the other way to do it is like you watch video game speedrunners or QA testers or something like that, and you know that they know the way to break a system, but it doesn't bother them, right? They keep going because they know how to proceed forward. They're like, oh, this is actually advantageous to me in one way. And that, like those people might gloss over things. It's like definitely being in leadership and developing some of these processes goes, oh, I have this problem, right? I'm going to go slap, right? It's like what was it? Like the Billy Mays slapping, tape over the leak and the
Yeah.
water leak. So you're like, oh, I've got this. I'm going to go solve it. Bam, I slap this thing on there. Process solved. But the problem is we're not the ones using it day in and day out. We use it maybe once a month, and we understand the idiosyncrasies of the process because we built it. So the goal in driving excellence and continuous improvement is making sure that at any given point, our team can come to us and just put the brakes on anything and say, hey, we got to pull the e-brake. This thing is starting to slide around on us. We're having these problems. This process is not working. We're seeing if it's a data problem or project management is caught, like we're spending 20% more time in project management with this process. We have those meetings with our engineering team. We have those meetings with our accounts teams. We have the meetings with even our customers and our clients. We get an understanding of how do you feel about our process and the way that we're working with you? And in many cases we've gotten, hey, this is really complicated and this takes way too much time, right? It's the engineer's dilemma of I have a process that takes a half hour, but I would like it to take 5 minutes, and I'm going to spend a week trying to automate this thing or like trying to come up with a new process to fix it. And that feedback loop and making the feedback loop very tight between the team and leadership and our customers is what has allowed us to have that continuous improvement and level of feedback and trust. Going back to like how you handle accountability is making people feel like they can be honest and open. Treating them that way is that they have ownership in the process, they have ownership in the way that we do delivery, they have ownership in communication across teams, and we trust them to be, I would say, constructive in that way. And hopefully it continues to make us better week over week as we collect that information and work with our teams.
What advice would you give to leaders just starting out in tech or digital strategy roles?
One of the biggest pieces of advice I have at this point is an understanding that, especially for founders, is that you can't wear at some point there's just so many hats that you're trying to put on that you start losing sight of the goal at the end of what does the goalpost look like, and does the goalpost keep moving, or are you really playing, you're playing a game with, I don't know, 10 different goals. Like it's just there's goals all over the place. You're trying to score all the time and you're not actually moving further down the field. You're just standing in one spot. So for leaders, trusting your team, and I feel like that's our number one job, is getting to a place where you are comfortable trusting your team and you bring the right people in. If pieces of what they do, right, going back to they're not an A player at, let's say, client management or account management, but they're an A player at delivering on product value or solutioning or whatever it happens to be. Like that, trusting your team and building that team around you in a way that makes sense has been the most difficult over the course of Jordan and I working at Facet to get to that place. And also asking for help, external help outside of the company,
Yeah.
whether it's, mentorship or a community leader, and accepting the fact that not everything is great on the other side of the fence. So those two pieces are like the biggest pieces of advice that I try to give anybody that asks at this point. The rest of the stuff for tech, right? You can go learn anything. If you know how to learn or know how to study, you can go figure it out. But the rest of it in leadership is just, it's the people around you and the people that you enable that are going to be your success or failure.
Peter, I always give Mo's final thoughts, but when I have a guest on, I always give them the last word. So, Peter, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts, I would absolutely say that, one, it's been a pleasure, Mo. And two, I hope that there's something in here that's valuable for the listeners. I mean, the world is changing very rapidly under our feet. And I think we're seeing an unprecedented amount of innovation, an unprecedented change in the way that people communicate and the connectedness of people. And in order for everyone to succeed and find, let's say contentment at some level, it's going to take work. And we all have to be willing to work on that with each other and be human to each other and accept some of, accept people for who they are at this point, and understand that everybody's roles in the world are changing, from people just coming out of school to people who are looking and getting ready to retire, and we have to be mindful of all of that.
Peter, where can my audience find you and connect with you?
So I'm available on LinkedIn, linkedin.com /P Vasilion, and I try to, that's my username pretty much everywhere. I try to make it very easy, so it's just P Vasilion, and you can get a hold of me across, LinkedIn, Twitter, I guess X at this point. I'll keep calling it Twitter until it stops bothering someone.
That's right. No, I love it.
Instagram, things like that. But realistically, I'm absolutely happy to make my email available, and I'm happy to take questions and happy to communicate with have a conversation with anyone. Check us out at facetinteractive.com or flightfx.io. And if you're running around and just want to say hi, just say hi. We're here and ready to have a chat.
Thanks a lot again, Peter. To my audience, don't forget to sign up for our monthly newsletter where we give you the good stuff. We don't sell you information. It's all free. So until next time, Peter, thanks so much. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mo.
All right.